It is very common to hear in the news about the increasing number of children on the spectrum. Hello, this is Dr. Kevin Cantwell, and I'm joined by Jody Smith, the Practical Medical Nutritionist. Now, our goal with these talks is to give you actionable steps in order to help you to get and ultimately stay healthy in a practical, sustainable way. Now, let's talk about the spectrum. What does it mean to be on the spectrum?
Well, Dr. Cantwell, the spectrum is a large span of issues, and it can begin at the bottom of the spectrum with attention deficit or attention deficit with hyperactivity, and it can go all the way to profound autism. And there are many things in between. There's Asperger's, persuasive developmental disorder, many different mood disorders, etc., that are considered to be on the spectrum. I think that if, for our audience sake, we're going to talk about kids that have autistic-like tendencies. And many times those tendencies, whether they're given a name or not, are something that parents know something's not right.
So when children are exhibiting the spectrum behaviors, what do you advise them to do?
Well, the first thing we want to do is try to figure out if there's anything that's contributing. So many parents have figured out little bits and pieces. In fact, many times they've asked their physicians and not been given a lot of encouragement in making practical changes. Maybe they notice that their child is extremely sensitive to textures or to clothing, and they're like, something's wrong here. It seems to be worse if they have a lot of sugar. It seems to be worse if they are having artificial flavors and colors, or sometimes exposures to different chemicals. I often have parents tell me these things and say, well, I've been trying to tell my doctor this, but they don't really know what to do about that. Many times kids have issues because the load is too heavy on their body. They're turned on to a much greater degree than we are, so they're more sensitive to sound, more sensitive to light, more sensitive to texture. So we've got to try to take the load off the body and see what's happening. So we have the hypersensitive, and then we have those that are so hyposensitive they can't seem to, they're not responsive the way that we would expect them. They're kind of dull. So we want to determine where is the child, and then we want to look at those things that are happening to them every day. What are they eating? What's their environment like? Do they have inhalant allergies? Do they have food allergies?
So have you really seen these nutritional and environmental things work with these kids?
I really have, and a lot of times, in fact, most of the time, we're working in conjunction with a practitioner, and there's some great practitioners out there who are looking at a lot of things, genetics, load, they're looking at yeast issues, but I have seen the most dramatic situations turned around. Sometimes all it is food. From the very beginning of my practice and working with nutrition, I have seen children who have had allergies be turned around completely, kids that have been diagnosed even mildly mentally retarded. Total change in diagnosis by getting the load off of their system. And that load might be dairy, it might be sugar, it might be gluten. Many, many children on the spectrum have gluten intolerance and dairy intolerance. And sometimes just lifting that load is enough to give them back a good part of their life. Other times it's trickier. We've got to work a little harder. A lot depends on how long they've had it and their genetics. Sometimes we see problems with ammonia levels, and that's where our low sulfur program comes in, because we've got to lower the ammonia level, which causes massive inflammation in the brain, in order to help them to begin to get some help. Other times it may be a yeast overgrowth or a gut problem, leaky gut syndrome, and we've got to correct that. Other times it may be IgG food-mediated allergies in conjunction with IgE allergies. And again, we've got to modify their diet and their environment in order to be able to handle those kinds of issues. But if you're a parent and you have not looked at those issues, you must before you just start down the drug pathway.
So where does a parent begin to determine what their own child's special needs are, their special issues are?
One of the things that I encourage parents to do is begin to track. That's one thing that we have available on our site, is that tracker. And whether you have help from a nutritionist or a consultant or not, you can begin to write down what your child's eating and the behavior. If behavior changes, if you see all kinds of things happening, that will help you. Pretty soon you're going to start to see patterns, and that's a place to begin. You certainly can read. Parents always tell me what's wrong. It's amazing how when I give them the opportunity to tell me what's going on, they do, and they don't even know that they've already solved the problem by just what they say. there are many different directions we would go based on what we would learn. So if there's something you can't figure out, then get extra help. But a lot of it you're going to be able to determine by just tracking what's happening with your child, seeing what they seem to be responding to and what they aren't, and making adjustments.